Hello, brilliant entrepreneur. It's Tash, Corbin here, and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 172, which means you can find all the relevant links and show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/172. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you the pros and cons of choosing a course model of leverage versus a membership model of leverage. So if you are looking at creating or doing a review of your leveraged products and you're wondering whether to make the switch from course to membership or the other way around, then this is going to be really helpful for you to weigh up the different options and how to ensure that you're not choosing your model to try and fix a problem that model doesn't fix. So let's dive on into this one because I think it's going to be really helpful. I'm Tash Corbin and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Generally, when people come into my Leverage and Launch program, which is how I support entrepreneurs to create and launch memberships and courses, they have a very fixed idea as to the model of leverage that they want to use. They might be very clear that it's definitely a course or it's definitely a membership. However, when we dive into their reasons for deciding on a particular model, sometimes it's based on untrue assumptions or beliefs about each of the different models. So, for example, sometimes people will be very attached to the idea of it being a membership because it's recurrent income and they feel that the perception is they won't have to market it as much once it's launched because you're still getting money over and over again. And so what's actually coming up for them in a lot of cases is that they actually would rather avoid the sales and marketing part of having a leveraged product. And so their perception that memberships take less marketing is their core reason for choosing a membership model. However, we know, and if we look at the facts, we know that conversion into an ongoing membership is generally lower than going into a fixed term course because our perception of how much it's going to cost us is infinite. So if we're thinking about joining a course that's $1,000 or a membership that's $100 a month, it's actually been shown that $1,000 upfront is perceived as cheaper or more cost-effective in most cases than paying $100 a month. Sometimes even $50 a month forever feels like it's a bigger ask than $1,000 once. And so what we want to ensure is that we're not using model to solve a problem that it doesn't actually fix. So we don't want to use your delivery model to solve a cash flow issue, for example. Some people decide that they want to create a course because you get far more money up front. But actually, the cash that comes in from a launch is not just determined by the model of what you're selling, but also by the type of launch that you use. So, for example, when I first launched my membership many years ago, the one that doesn't exist anymore, I initially wanted a big cash injection up front. So all I did was in the launch, I incentivized people to pay for a year up front in the first lead magnet for that launch so that I got a great big cash injection. And then the second half of my launch was focused on selling the monthly pay by the month option. And so that meant I got a good cash injection up front, but I also started to build my monthly recurring income as well. So you can see the assumption is that courses bring in more money up front, but actually it's not the model of delivery that determines the potential income from your launch. It's actually the focus of the launch that determines the potential outcome of the launch. Again, the sales issue. So sometimes people try and use their model to overcome a sales or marketing issue. So there's a perception that memberships are easier because you don't have to keep remarketing to the same people. And also there's a perception that sometimes it's easier to market a short-term course because it will be done over and done with and we're going to get the result really quickly. But often the perception from your audience, if your courses can be too short, then the perception can be that it's not actually going to create lasting change. So as you can see, the model of delivery doesn't necessarily solve the problems that we believe it will solve. People who sell courses or programs on how to build a membership will aim to convince you that a membership model is far superior. People who teach online course creation will aim to convince you that courses are far superior. But ultimately, each model has its pros and cons. And a lot of the reasons why marketers tell you memberships are a better option, we can actually achieve with courses. And a lot of the reasons why marketers tell you that courses are a better option, we can achieve with memberships. So when it comes to selecting the model, I just want to encourage you to discern who you are getting information and insights from and give a test to some of those assumptions. If you ever want to DM me and ask me questions about different models or, hey, Tash, I heard that this is a reason why I should do a membership instead of a course, or I'm thinking of moving from a course to a membership because of blah, blah, blah. Anytime you are welcome to DM me with those because I am absolutely happy to help you work out what is reality and what is just marketing spin that you've heard and taken on board as, oh, well, that sounds quite logical, but actually it's not true and it's not the most effective way to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. Now, the final reason why sometimes people choose a model and it's not the right reason to choose a certain model is messaging as well. So I actually had a friend who I was in a mastermind with, and she started out with a membership, and about 6 months into it, it was quite successful at first and it had a little bit of drop off. But about 6 months into it, she started to feel like one of the reasons why it wasn't getting any new members was that it needed to be a course rather than a membership because of this perception. People were not joining because they perceived, because it was a membership, it was going to take them a long time to resolve the issue. And so she thought it would be much easier and more logical for people to see that we're going to solve this quickly if she made it an 8-week course. But actually, that problem was far better resolved through adjusting the messaging. So rather than just changing the model, what she needed to do was in her messaging, make it clear that people who joined her membership would get a new system of working and start implementing straight away, and they would build their skills over time, but they would get good results very quickly. And they did inside that membership. So she actually ended up switching it over to a course, and then it sold pretty well again as a course. But then at the end of the course, everyone was saying, I feel like I need to do this again because yes, I've definitely improved the way I'm doing this, but I feel like I need more practice. So guess what? She ended up taking it back to being a membership and recognized that what she had was not a model issue, it was a messaging issue. And so the big takeaway that I want to give you from this podcast episode is don't try to fix specific issues through model if model's not the problem. Be really clear. What is the actual problem I have? Am I struggling with conversion? Am I struggling with messaging? Am I struggling with cash flow? Am I struggling with I really want to avoid having to make sales? Well, all 4 of those things can be resolved through changing your marketing approach, your launch style, whether you evergreen it, without ever having to change the model of delivery. Okay, so there are a couple of things that do differentiate between courses and memberships. And these have pros and cons to each of them. So for a course, for example, it's generally a complex thing that we need to learn, But once we've learned it, we're done, right? It's a complex thing that we need to learn or change or transform. But once it's done, it's done. So for example, my takeoff program is for people wanting to get to that consistent 5 to 8K months in their business. And once they've gone through the takeoff program, yes, there are some tweaks and changes and refinements you could make by going through the process again. But once you're out of startup, you're kind of out of startup. So it lends itself more to being a course model. Whereas something like being more productive in your business or setting up systems or doing your content in your business may lend itself to a more membership model or a more ongoing way of people working with you, because it's fairly simple to set up the system or to learn how to batch creating your content and those sort of things. The concept isn't complex, it's much simpler. But the value comes from doing it consistently and getting into those habits. So that may lend itself to a membership model more effectively. Once it is, once a course is created, it generally is a set form of content and there's no new content that needs to be released consistently. Whereas for a membership model, there's generally, not always, but there's generally an expectation of fresh content coming into that membership fairly consistently. Now, again, I've been a part of memberships where there's no new content. There's just a live call every month. The content is all there, and it doesn't change, but the calls are ways to like practice, or we co-work together to implement those sorts of things. So there are membership models where you don't need to create more content, but in general, there's an expectation of more content coming in, fresh content in a membership, whereas there's not an expectation of that in courses. In a membership, it has pros because it gives people more time to apply, and you're being paid for that time that you're helping them to learn how to apply it and practice it. But again, there are ways that you can deliver courses where you can give people plenty of time. So my takeoff program, it's a course, but there's no time limit. So I used a different element of the model, just the amount of time that people have inside the program, to resolve the challenge that some people do it faster than others. So, and for some people, they need a couple of years of my support and mentoring to get through those tricky decisions and validating their messaging and really working on their value proposition and their social media, all those sorts of things. It's a complex thing starting an online business, and some people have 3 hours a week, some people have 30 hours a week. And so I wouldn't want to disadvantage the people who only have 3 hours a week to work on this by kicking them out after 16 weeks. So I just have you have access to the program for as long as it exists approach to my course to give people lots and lots of time. So as you can see, even with some of those basic differences between a course and a membership, you can overcome those issues without having to change the model. So here are some things that I want to particularly say you can have with both of them. So sometimes people say to me, well, courses are high ticket and memberships are low ticket. But you can have a high ticket membership and you can have a low ticket course. So both courses and memberships have both low ticket and high ticket models and options that you can use when it comes to creating and delivering them. Another one is the cash flow issue. So people will say, well, a membership is better for ongoing cash flow, whereas a course creates more of a roller coaster of income. But actually that comes down to your launch approach and your focal point when you're launching and the reasons that you incentivize people to join during a launch. So for example, I do an extended payment plan with the takeoff program in each launch so that I am getting ongoing cash flow. I've done 8-month payment plans, I've done 10-month payment plans, and I'm actually going to be using a 12-month payment plan in my next launch. And so what that does is it spreads out people's payments over 12 months. And a lot of people find that really helpful for their own cash flow in terms of investing. But it also sets me up with monthly recurrent income for 12 months. And because I launch the Takeoff program twice a year, I'm topping up the number of people who are on payment plans. So as some payment plans finish, new ones are beginning. And so overall, my monthly recurring income is actually going up. Additionally, I have evergreen funnels that sell the takeoff program in addition to those 2 launches that I do each year. So there are 2 to 3, sometimes 5 or 6 people every single month who join the takeoff program through these evergreen channels. And so those people, regardless of whether they buy on a payment plan or upfront, are creating consistent cash flow. So that cash flow problem doesn't need to be solved by having a membership model. That cash flow problem can be solved by the way that you sell and market. Additionally, a membership doesn't necessarily solve your cash flow issues. One of the challenges that comes with a membership is that if you don't have the upfront option as part of your launch, then it takes a long time for you to build that return on investment for your time when it comes to a membership. I have a lot of people that I've worked with to launch memberships, and they were expecting to have 100 people joining their first launch, and they have 6. And so they come to me and they say, look, I had expectations of making, like it's $50 a month. I had expectations of making $5,000 a month from the outset and scaling up from there. And here I am getting a piddly little $250 a month to run this membership. It's not worth my time. And I wish I had done it as a course. Those 5 people would have paid me $2,000 up front for this. And I could have worked with them for a year, but I would have had $10,000 in the bank account. And so the assumptions that people make about cash flow, the benefits and the risks of certain models often can catch them out. So we don't necessarily just have easier cash flow with a membership. Sometimes the cash flow is better done by having a course but selling it evergreen. So there's big assumptions, as you can see. Okay, a couple of other things. Number one, another one is that a membership is great because you've got people coming in evergreen, whereas a course you have to launch. That's not true. As I just said with the takeoff program, I sell that evergreen as well. Sure, the conversion rate is not as high as when I'm doing a launch, but I do have those sales coming in very consistently. And so I have evergreen sales as well as launch sales that come in through the takeoff program. And in fact, when I did have my Heart Center Business Academy membership, I needed to launch that more consistently because there was a slight drop-off rate. So for every 100 people who joined the academy, maybe 10 to 15 of them would drop out within 3 to 6 months. And so it was never something that was like laid in stone. I would always have those people be members. I needed to make sure that I was consistently topping up the membership, and a launch does create more urgency in some cases than evergreen sales. And so I found the academy sold better in launch and takeoff sells better on evergreen. So, those assumptions are just always out there being disproven. Another one is delivery of results. So I've had someone say to me, I want to do it as a course because that forces people to get it done, and therefore I'm going to have more people that get results from it. And that's not necessarily the case as well. What happens if you have a course with limited time for people to be part of it? Yes, that means for the very driven people, the people who have the time and the capacity, they might be far more likely to actually finish it and be done and be talking about it and saying how amazing it was. But there's also the other side of that, which is anyone who has something happen in their life or who doesn't necessarily have the capacity, or they get stuck somewhere, they're going to be left flailing, and then they finish, when the course is finished, if they're booted out, and they'll feel like they have had less opportunity to get those results. So yes, you might have more people finish and speaking positively about the course quickly, but you may also have more people who don't get the results because they weren't able to string together the perfect 6-week or 12-week sequence of nothing going wrong in their lives in order to be able to focus on the course and get it done. All right. Now, another one that people make assumptions about is live versus pre-recorded. A course can be pre-recorded, but a membership has to have live calls. Not true. Again, it's not necessarily true. I belong to several memberships where there's no live component, but I get fresh content consistently. So I'm part of a membership for stock images and videos, as well as Canva templates and pretty design elements. It's one of my favorite little artsy memberships to be part of. I'm also part of a membership that they release a new course every 2 to 3 months. And so as long as you're a member, you get access to all of the new courses. So both of those are memberships that have 0 live components. I also have been part of courses that were pretty much all live and there wasn't a lot of pre-recorded. So both options are available with both models. And this will be the punchline that you hear over and over in this podcast is actually you can do that with both models. And the assumption that you can only do it with one instead of the other, it means that sometimes you're choosing the wrong model for the wrong reasons. Okay, now the last thing that I want to say about courses and memberships where you can have it in both models is freedom. So this is a big conversation that I've had with people over the last few months where someone said they don't want to do a membership because they want the freedom to be able to take holidays and they don't want to have to be available to their audience every single month. And actually, again, I've been part of memberships that closed down in December and January. And you still kept paying your monthly fee and you could still access the content, but there was no live component for the December and January part of the year. I've also been in memberships where in the Northern Hemisphere, they take the summer off. So July and August, there aren't any live calls. The Facebook group is archived or paused for those 2 months. You can still do the modules and all of that kind of thing. And generally there's a little incentive or a pre-recorded something that you'll be able to get access to at that time. But the person facilitating it has a high degree of freedom. You can also create freedom models in memberships by having other people help facilitate for you, having a guest trainer while you're away for 4 weeks overseas on a beautiful holiday. And also sometimes people get worried with a membership model that they'll have to do it forever, that they're creating the expectation that it's going to be forever. So I had someone that I was working with in the Leverage and Launch program on this, and she's like, I just hate the idea that I have to do it forever. And so what we ended up doing was putting on her sales page and in her terms and conditions that if at any time the membership was going to close, she would give 2 months notice and any unused prepaid months would be refunded. And what we also did was moved her away from focusing on selling the annual plan and instead just have as many people as possible on the pay by the month option so that you don't feel this sense of obligation to keep it going for a year because someone just bought a year worth of being in the membership. And so there are ways that you can create that sense and that reality of freedom in a membership model as well as in a course model. You can have freedom-based businesses with both of those models. As I said, you can have a membership with 0 live components. How freedom-orientated is that? So you could pre-record a bunch of content and have it drip-fed out, and you're flouncing around the countryside learning how to rock climb at the time. You don't have to be there live in either of those models if that's something that you don't want to do. Okay, so this may have created a little confusion for you, given that a lot of the reasons why people choose one model over the other has just been dispelled. But what I want to say to you is that I don't want to create more confusion and help you undecide and be back at, oh, well then now I don't know, is it a course or a membership? And to help you make that decision through the lens of things that are actually true, I've got a beautiful little quiz that you can go through that helps you see what lends itself more to a membership and what lends itself more to a course. And then you can make an informed decision from there. So I'll put the link to that quiz for you in the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/172. So it's not going to tell you it definitely has to be a course or it definitely has to be a membership. It will just tell you which way it may be leaning. And then when you've got that in front of you, you can make an informed decision. And even if it says, look, this is leaning towards more of a membership, but you think, no, you know what? I think I want to do it as a course, but now I know what I need to consider when I deliver it as a course. Well, then it's still done its job. Okay, so go and check that one out at tashcorbin.com/172. And as I said, at any point in time, feel free to send me a direct message or email support@tashcorbin.com and ask any questions that you have about these models, or let me know which one you're leaning towards and why. And I'm happy to give you a little bit of feedback free of charge, like in the comments or in the DMs or on email, to help you feel really strong in that decision. And also sometimes people will send those sorts of questions through to me and I can give them a couple of key things to just look out for when it comes to their launch or when it comes to their pricing model or things like that. So feel free to get in touch at any time. And that is it for today's episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. Until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.